Hello, EWE Universe, and welcome to Behind Enemy Lines Interview Edition. The inmates are running the asylum. Robin has become Batman, and I have come out of the shadow of Dustin Markowitz as I am taking over the podcast tonight. And sitting virtually across from me in the beautiful wherever he's from, I'm not going to steal his tagline, is Dustin Markowitz himself, the handler of Dutch Clark. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm doing great, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, considering the fact that we've had to do this about 15 times now.
I don't know what you're talking about, and according to this, the people listening, this is the first time they've heard our
Well,
voices.
it's not the first time I've heard your voice tonight, so I'm going to tell them about it.
Well, I have a beautiful voice, so back off.
Regardless, we've kind of turned the tables tonight, and we decided to give EW a different outlook, and this time we're going to interview the interviewee, or the interviewer. I guess you're the interviewee now.
I'm a little scared, John. I'm not gonna lie. But I've got my big boy underwear on, so let's do it.
You should be, because you've opened a new can of worms now, letting me have this power. It's going to go to my head now.
That's it is what it is, I guess.
But regardless, so I'll start out just with a basic question, because I'm totally winging it, no piece of paper in front of me or anything. I'm sure you're always more prepared than I am, but in typical John North fashion, I am not prepared at all.
Glad that all the stuff that I've taught you, all the professionalism, has really bled over into your
it's
interview
rubbed
skills.
off a lot. But I'll start off by telling us, how did you get your start in e-fetting?
Well, I was born a poor black child, and by the way, The Jerk, great movie if you haven't seen it, Steve Martin. 1997, July, I was 11 years old. I was surfing around the old Yahoo categories on wrestling, and I came across this website for Badass Fantasy Wrestling. Ended up showing it to my parents, and they approved me, and next thing you know, I'm Ric Flair in Badass Fantasy Wrestling, and that's how it all kind of started.
Of course, you were Ric Flair. But regardless, how did your parents react to you wanting to do something like that? Because I find that interesting, that you had to ask your parents, because that's something I never had to do when I broke into writing for an e-fed.
Well, I was 11 years old. I mean, in '97, internet was still kind of a new thing, and badass was sort of like I don't want to call it a bad word, but it was risque, I guess, if you will. My parents, pretty much like they had two questions. Like, they realized that badass wasn't bad. They asked me if there was a rules page, which there was. And they asked me if it cost anything, which it didn't. They thought fantasy football, fantasy baseball, that kind of thing. And, once they approved me, I got into it. And, they were pretty supportive of it, actually. I know it's going to sound kind of funny. I mean, they knew I was pretty smart growing up, but, I think it was about 4 or 5 months later, I did an RP, and I printed it out, and I showed it to my dad, kind of showing him, the kind of writing I was able to do. And I did like a 500-word RP, page long, and, he was impressed. I mean, you could see the pride on his face, because I don't think he really knew that I was able to write like that at that age. And, like I said, they were very supportive, so.
Well, that's good, and I think, you're one of the few people that I know personally that can speak on this, but I'm pretty sure that was like one of the first eras of fantasy wrestling. Am I right? Am I correct when I assume that?
Yeah, to some extent, as far as fantasy wrestling on the internet goes. Obviously, you had, play-by-mail feds, you had...
and I do remember those. I do remember those play-by-mails.
Yeah, and they're still around to this day, actually. But, there was a few email ones to the early, when email first started in the early to mid-'90s. You had a few, on the old Telnet boards, they would have that kind of thing. But, no, e-fetting was really broken down into two booms, so to speak. The first boom, which was basically like 96, 97, 98, was revolved around the Monday Night Wars when the NWO came in, and you had this huge influx of wrestling fans that were a younger generation with internet access, and that's when you started to see a lot more people come in. The second boom happened between 2000 and about 2000, 2001, 2002, when WCW started going under and WWF, now WWE, acquired them. It really started in 2000, though, because that's when you started seeing a lot of the WCW guys come to WWE, and you saw another influx of fans because you start seeing one conglomerate federation, and those are really the two booms in e-fitting.
Yeah, and definitely sparked interest. I know, from a personal point of view, which we'll get to my interview next week. But since we're on that subject, how have you adapted to role playing then and growing up in role playing now? Because I know that there's a big difference, and even in the past, 12 years that I've been doing it, there's a huge difference in role plays then and what'll get you a win and role plays now. So how have you adapted to that?
Uh, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I did teach you something. No, I guess the best way to answer that, I mean, even going from like 97 to 2000, when you came in, there was a difference in RPs. When I first started, and you laugh when I say Ric Flair. I am a huge Ric Flair mark, obviously, but you look at what got you a win, and it used to be, okay, do 10, 15, 400 word blurbs on a message board, and that's how you got to win. It was about like short quantity RPs. You didn't have really the quality aspect, at least in my opinion. You didn't really see it that much. It was all about how many blurbs can you put together. Can it make it interesting in 400 words, 500 words? And that's what I started with. As time progressed and you started seeing RPing change, you started developing more into, okay, well, let's take it outside of the ring setting. It doesn't necessarily have to be a straight promo. Let's develop a storyline. Let's develop a setting. Now, I like that to an extent because now the way I write today, you have a good blend, and I feel that, a 2,000-3,000 word RP really is the limit that you want to go lengthwise, where you keep the attention of your reader, and you can do 100 different things with those kind of RPs. Biggest issue that I saw, though, especially over the last, I don't know, probably, 10 years or so, is that a lot of people got to a point where it was all storyline, it was all setting. You were seeing 7,000, 8,000 words of just nothing. And it's boring. And people can argue with me all day long about how, well, this is supposed to be interesting and da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't care how good of a writer you are. If I want to read a book, I'll go read a book. I want to read an RP. I want to be taken out for the moment. I want to feel what you're feeling. And I want to leave satisfied without having to sit down for 3 or 4 hours to read it. And that's one thing that I think is very important, that, people's attention spans, whether it's TV, music, movies, or reading, is limited. And I think it's a sign of a great writer to be able to tell a story in 2,000, 3,000 words rather than have to take 10,000 words to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there for a while, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I really felt like the old school mentality of, you cut a promo on this guy for 3,000 words. You can have some storyline, but as long as you mix in some promo, it'll still get you winning a match. But I honestly thought there for a while that was going to die, and it's going to be all storyline. I don't know if you felt like that was when you were out of the game mostly, but I felt like that. I don't know if you felt like that or not.
It's kind of hard. I was out of the game from basically the end of 2005 until early 2010. Not that I was completely out of it. I still followed you and a couple other people that I had helped out along the way, which I don't know if you want to talk about that as well. We can if you'd like. No, I don't know if I was worried that the old school mentality was going to die per se, but I know I was worried that people were forgetting that there is a sense of realism that goes into an RP. In other words, I kind of felt like if you're not going to see this on TV, like you can't see this on TV, you really can't do it in an RP. And that's sort of how I've always felt with my writing, at least. Actually, to be honest, if you come to think of it, yeah, I guess I could say I thought it might die a little bit, because a lot, especially around 2004, 2005, 2006, a lot of the old school guys, and I know guys that, were role-playing before I even started, were retiring, and they were moving on because they got tired of it. They got tired of, looking at a 10,000-word story that had no relevance on what the match was. First and foremost, e-fetting is about beating your opponent. And you can't beat your opponent by talking about how you took a walk along a beach. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way. If you're walking along the beach and you rip your opponent to shreds, that's what an RP is about in e-fetting, and that's how you become, a great fantasy wrestler.
That, or now I'm a big fan of you can always have that internal struggle as well. In your mind, you don't have to now. I don't think you have to cut a promo like you would have. I think now you can go inside that wrestler's head a lot more than you used to. Could honestly.
I agree. I'm not saying that. I'm kind of basing my analogy on real base facts. I think the writer has a lot to do with it as well. I mean, I know with your work and my work and some other ones that I've read, you can do an internal struggle RP and make it relevant. I know there's, in fact, I mentioned, although he hasn't won a lot of friends in EWE, but for those of you who know him, Jeff used to write a character called Vespertine. And he wrote an RP that I thought was brilliant that was actually set in the past, but it was all an allusion to what the match was. That is where I think the problem lies against a good RPer with fantasy like that and a bad RPer with fantasy like that. You have to relate it back to the match. And I can't stress that enough, that you have to blend your RP. From beginning to end, it has to blend, it has to make sense, and it has to be relevant. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you have to develop your character a lot too. I think that's big too, and you have to do that via, your match. And I think a good RP combines all those. But we'll get off that subject because we can honestly talk forever about it. Because
sure, absolutely.
These are conversations we have on MSN all the time. But I guess I wanted to ask you. I'm kind of going just off the cuff, like I said. But when you're preparing to make a character, and I know you haven't had so many characters, but when you prepare to make a character off the cuff, just come up with one to put in EFED, say Dutch Clark. What goes in your mind? What do you want to get across when you make that character? Like, what's your goal?
That's actually another really good question, John. In 15 years of being around it, I've not only developed my own characters, but I've worked a lot with the people through the MMSW, which I guess I'm getting a little off topic here. Well, I guess that's part of it. MMSW, for those who don't know, that's the Main Machine School of Wrestling. I actually did an EFED school for a while, which I don't know. Is that a story you want me to tell, John? I mean,
yeah, go for it. I'm up to hearing it, so I'm sure everybody else is too.
Yeah. Main Machine School of Wrestling started out as a UCWP, which was the Ultimate Championship Wrestling Power Plant. Back in 98, 99, I was the world champion of Ultimate Championship Wrestling, which was actually a part of a group called WrestleLine, which actually ended up becoming some big wrestling thing that WWE bought out. But they used to run a bunch of different feds, kind of like what Wrassle was for you, John, Wrassle.net.
Yeah, I remember. I remember Wrassle well.
Yeah, sort of the same thing, sort of the same thought process. There were several different feds involved. We had, probably in UCW alone, we probably had 75 to 100 wrestlers at any given time. Just monster cards. But they asked me if I would be interested in, starting this power plant, the Ultimate Championship Wrestling Power Plant. I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid at this point, so I'm thinking, basically 98, 99, I guess I was 13 when they asked me to do it. And I was like, well, I've been doing it a couple of years. I guess I could tell people how to. That kind of spawned into the Mean Machine School of Wrestling. When UCW closed and I no longer was involved with it, I kept helping these people out through that website. Became the Mean Machine School of Wrestling. Mean Machine was my first created fantasy character. And, it kind of evolved into producing, at least in my estimation, some of the best RPers I've ever seen. Thankfully, I was able to help them along. Getting back to your question, though, I guess the best way to start is what are you looking to convey with a character? I guess that's what goes through my mind. When I created Dutch, I was at kind of a weird place in my life. Dutch, I actually believe, is an extension of myself. Just with the volume turned way, way up. I was at a point in my life where I was like, I'd been retired for about 4.5 years. People, I guess they still knew me to some extent. Luke, in fact, I was talking to Luke, our second in command in EWE, and he was telling me that he had actually heard of Jack Michaels before Dutch Clark joined, which I thought was kind of interesting. But he had heard the stories, and that made me feel good. And of course, my legacy, I guess, if there is such a thing, lived on through you and Jon. I mean, you've done a heck of a job in your career, of course. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like when I came back, I had been thinking about it for a few months, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could take a character and do it all over again. So when I developed Dutch, I was dating a girl who she called herself the Irish Fury, so as a joke I called myself the original Irish Fury because I'm part Irish myself. So I used that nickname. I said, okay, let me come up with this, and I was going to come up with like a stereotype. And the first idea I had, I guess the concept was kind of similar to like Brad Pitt's character in Snatch. You ever see that?
No.
Okay. Very, very Irish, like a fighter kind of thing. Boxer, and I didn't really like that too much. It just didn't really flow when I was playing around with them. And I was like, why don't I just write a character that's me to some extent? I was going through a real rough period in my life, just with things that were going on, and I developed this guy who basically had upper middle, was in an upper middle class family, had to end up working, help out his family, lost everything, got into alcohol, kind of burned himself out, which is pretty much my life story right there. And then through freak chance runs into Jack Michaels, who was my primary handled character for, a decade, and ends up turning his life around. And that kind of was what I was hoping to accomplish in my real life, and that's why I developed Dutch Clark.
I do think it's very interesting that all of our characters just are automatically placed kind of into the Mean Machine School of Wrestling. I do kind of like that family of characters that we have, and I always reference it, even in other feds I go to, and they're like, "What is this?" But I still do it, and I still have callbacks to some of the moves, like Jack Michaels' Mean Machine. I still have my newer wrestlers move sets. I always have their finishers or their signatures too, just as a callback.
And that makes me feel good because it feels like a part of me that I was able to help someone out with lives on. It's kind of sad. I downloaded AOL Instant Messenger for the first time in years.
Yeah.
I was looking at my lists, and I've got people on from my UCW days, my RAW days back in the late 90s, and guys that I helped teach through those times. I'm like, man, these guys have been retired for, 10 years, and I'm still going strong. I mean, it's kind of a weird feeling, but, there's still a couple other ones that I help, and I find it very humbling, and I'm very proud to see you. I've been helping out Scarlett, Jen, lately, and I think she really has a lot of potential and talent. I've helped out. I've helped out a lot of people with things, but there's only so many that actually fly, quote unquote, the MMSW banner. And I'm proud of the ones that are still doing it, especially in EWE, because I think they have a lot of potential and they're being successful, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, as long as you're having fun doing it and it doesn't feel like a chore, then we give Mike a lot of heck because he's older and he still role plays. But if you still enjoy doing it and you got time to do it, then why not? If it brings you joy, then why not do it?
Absolutely. And the thing that I laugh at, you mentioned older. The fact of the matter is that the average RPer age these days is not what it was when you first started or when I first started.
That's very true.
It's a lot older now, and I think that's part of the reason why RPing has actually become more refined now, because we've matured in the game.
Yeah.
And I think your average age anymore, is in their 20s, no matter how you look at it. So, at 26 years old, I'm normal.
Yeah.
So
you're in your prime.
Yeah, it's like I'm starting. I've been doing it 15 years. I feel like Kobe Bryant. He's been playing for 14 years, yet he's only in his early 30s. So it's like, okay. So
yeah. So I guess I'll make this a little more EWE related, so we don't. But I do want to go back to some general e-fetting questions. But who are some guys or some gals, either way, that you look up to and that you like to read in EWE?
In EWE, well, John, you're my first and foremost. I love reading your stuff as Kincaid, as Derek, as as John North back in the day, as RVD, as Hurricane. I've always enjoyed your work. Scarlett, again, I started working with Jen, and I love what she's been able to do and how she's been coming along. I love reading Jay when he actually, has the time and the inclination to get into it. I love reading Luke. In fact, I think Luke is probably, I don't want to call him underrated because he's a phenomenal writer and he's been highly, highly successful in EWE, but I think people overlook his writing ability when it comes to, especially when it comes to Amelia, the Phoenix, Peterson.
Yeah.
I think he's very underrated, and people tend to forget he's still around. More recently, I enjoy Mark's work a lot. I've been fortunate enough to help him with his AJ Styles character, and he's kind of developed into a very solid AJ Styles. I like reading Mike, of course. I mean, it's hard not to like a character, that's been around as long as he has, especially the White Tiger character. I should say a handler around as long as he has, especially the White Tiger character. I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody else I read. I read Abdul, although I can't say I've really been a huge fan of his work recently, but I know he's been distracted with real life stuff, so I mean that's... he's always been kind of one of those ones that's hit or miss for me, but I will check it out from time to time. Most recently, I guess my one that I've been reading quite a bit is Ailey. I think she's great.
Yeah, she's impressive. She's impressive.
Yeah. I get such a kick out of what she, especially with Mallory. Her shawl is good, but the Mallory Costas character, oh my God, when the first time I ever saw her RP was when she did this Twitter war thing against Dutch, and it's like, man, this is really impressive. I mean, you're going, your balls out against the undisputed champion. Not to brag, I'm just, saying.
Yeah.
And she was holding her own, and I was like, wow, that's a sign of a really strong RPer. So, yeah, I mean, of course, like I said, I like reading Darius. I call him Darius, Demetrius. Pretty much everyone. I mean, I like reading RPs in general. There's only a handful that really are misses for me, but no, those are the ones that I like reading the most.
Yeah, well, I agree with you to that extent. I do like to read RPs too. It just pretty much you nailed everybody that I enjoy reading as well. What's your favorite part about? I guess this goes along with it is being in the community that EWE is, because we've touched on it a little bit before on our different podcasts. Is that no, our results don't go up on time ever, and no, it may not be perfect. But yet, we get new members joining every day, so we're doing something right in EWE. So, what's your favorite part about it?
That's a tough question. I've said before that, I wouldn't want to be in any other Fed right now if I was going to come back. And I think a big piece of it is Jay. I think Jay puts, even though the results are late and da-da-da-da-da-da, I think, even through all the da-da-da, he manages to run a really good Fed. I love the graphics. I love the dedication and the history. I can't think of too many Feds right now, and I know a couple that have been around that long, but that have the history EWE has. I was fortunate enough to actually have a character there during the changeover when EWE is actually created, and I actually believe that, it's just a great. I'm trying to think of the right word here, and I'm falling a little flat, and I apologize, but it's just soulful. There's something about it that's endearing to me, and I consider it home. I really do.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. So we'll go. I did think of a few questions. It's away from the EWE topic, but it is e-fetting, and so these are just random. I'm going to throw at you that I thought of. It's about characters in e-fetting right now, and I think there's an overabundance of heels, the heel characters in e-fetting today. I think, is that a fair assumption?
I would agree with
you. If you look at a lot of Feds across the board, there's a lot of heel. The heel to face ratio. There's more heels than there are faces. I mean, and that's fairly recent from what I know. There's a lot more. It's usually a pretty good balance. Why do you think it is? Why do you think there's more heels now than they were faces?
Um, well, it's funny because when I first got started, there was hardly any heels. It was actually just the opposite. It was almost all faces, and I know even when you came in, you had a lot of faces, or people claiming to be faces. I don't get it. My guy just burned down a building with 10 children inside, but I want him to be cheered. I was like, no, it doesn't work. I think because I think it's easier to play a heel, and I'm not saying to play him well. I'm saying just in general. I think it's easier to play a heel sometimes because you can do more with a heel that you couldn't do with a face. I mean, if you want to do an RP, for example, where you take a coffee pot and smash a guy in the face with it, you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. If you're a face, you can't do that. You can't be, mean in your RPs. You can't be greedy. You can't, you have to play kind of this caricature. I also think that the professional wrestling in general tends to endorse heels more and has blurred that line. So I don't think there really is such a thing as a pure heel anymore or a pure face. I was playing tweeners. Of course, I'm sure everyone knows what a tweener is. At least I'm hoping. Going back, I mean, I was using a tweener before tweeners were even really. They didn't really even have a name for them when I got started. We're talking during when Stone Cold Steve Austin was becoming popular. 1997, Austin was a heel, but he was getting cheered as a face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have this dynamic, if you will, that people tend to follow what's going on TV. And I'm not saying I was a trendsetter by doing that, 10 years before it became popular, but I think times are finally catching up, and e-fetting reflects that the line has been blurred a lot more, and like I said, they realize that you can do more as a heel than you can as a face.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you're a face, like you said, you have a set of rules that you have to follow. If you're a heel, you don't have any set of rules to follow, and I think now in this day and age in e-fetting, I think it's a lot harder to play a pure baby face than it is to play a heel.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it takes more creativity, and I've got to where now I respect a person that plays a pure babyface because it's tough. And I realized I did it with Derek, for 4 years, and I look back now and I'm like, how did I do that and win so much? Because it's tough.
Absolutely. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that a pure babyface is your best heel.
Yeah.
And
sure.
is e-fetting. People hate the pure babyface, and if you can do it, you're a step ahead of the game.
Going off that question, more about e-fetting in general, do you think, do you see a time where we may have another boom in e-fetting, or do you think it's slowly declining? Because I was at the notion that e-fetting was downhill and it wasn't as hot as it was, and then I joined another fed, and I'm not going to mention it on here, of course, and then I started realizing there's a lot of e-feds out there that I didn't realize, and I thought, well, here I thought it was dying, but here's 12 to 15 to 20 e-feds that are thriving right now. And I was just wondering, do you think that we're going to hit another boom where it's popular again, or do you think it's just going to keep steady and then us old RPers quit and then it kind of ends there?
That's a tough question to answer, John.
Yeah.
You look at e-fetting follows real trends. If you look at the decline in wrestling ratings, was also a decline in e-fetting. 2005, I mean, basically when I left in 2005 to about 2008, 2009, I mean, it was just a steady downhill climb. I should say a downhill decline. It lost its mainstream appeal. I think that e-fetting, though, might hit another boom if wrestling hits another boom, and I think recently wrestling has kind of hit another boom. And if you notice, EWE is a good example. Look when CM Punk did his thing. Okay, the pipe bomb fiasco last year. Remember that?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Okay, look at that, and then look at the numbers in EWE and the amount of wrestlers we started getting to join more after that. that re-sparked interest in professional wrestling. I had not really watched wrestling at all for 3 or 4 years, and when that happened, I actually started watching again because it was interesting to me. I think that has a lot to do with the booms in e-fitting. What would take another boom? You'd have to have a legit second federation. I don't think TNA or ROH or Shikara or any of that holds a candle to WWE as far as production. You're not going to see, there's no second company anymore. There's no WCW, there's no NWA, there's no AWA, there's no USWA. It's just WWE, and I think that really hurts e-fitting as well. Do I think e-fitting will ever go away? Of course not. I think e-fitting will always live on. I think people get a kick out of writing and reading in general, and I think that the old-timer, so to speak, will keep it alive. I mean, I don't foresee myself really leaving anytime soon, as long as I'm enjoying myself. And if I do leave, who knows? Maybe I'll be gone 6 months and I'll come back. Maybe I'll be gone 8 months and I'll come back. But I have a feeling I'll come back.
That's the great thing about e-fitting. You always think you're done, and then you get the itch, and then you don't come back, and then you just keep getting the itch, and you're like, well, I got to come back, I guess.
It's that 4-letter word that has hit us all. I didn't have it for 4 years, and all of a sudden it just hit me one day. So and that's the way it goes.
Yeah, it is. So I guess you've asked everybody this question, and I guess we're gonna. I'm almost done, but what would you change about EW if you could change anything about it? What would it be?
I want all the female handlers naked on a cake and served to me. No. What would I change about EWE? The standard answer has definitely been the results same. Absolutely. Unfortunately, I understand the reality of the situation because I live in reality. I think a lot of these handlers don't really realize what it is. I'm not saying that they can't be up faster. I'm just saying, don't try to say, oh, well, they need to be up tomorrow. Well, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. That's real life. The one thing I would change, honestly, I would like to see EWE divisionalized a little bit better. In other words, I don't like the concept of what I consider to be main event RPers role-playing for lower grade titles. We recently reintroduced the X Core, which I think is a good development, but I already had like 3 or 4 people ask me, oh, I'm going to go for the, or tell me, not ask me, I'm going to go for the X Core. And I'm like, you're telling me that you're going to go for a low grade title? Oh, yeah, I want to have that. Well, that's fine and dandy, but, that's not the purpose of it. I don't want to discourage people from joining the Fed. There should be success on different levels. On the same side, on the opposite side of the coin, though, I also believe that the best way for someone to improve, excuse the language here, but is to get their ass kicked a few times.
Yeah.
The more you lose, you might get discouraged, but if you truly want to become a better RPer, you'll start finding reasons to become a better RPer.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's always been my thought process. So yeah, that would be the one thing I would change. I would say, I don't want to see these guys asking to go after low grade titles. I want to see these guys wanting to go after the INT, wanting to go after the Undisputed, wanting to go after the tag team titles, wanting to go after these belts to become better. Now, based on, and I don't mean to date this, if you are listening, post it, but we did have 32 signups for King Extreme. I think that's great. Last year I don't think we had remotely close to that. And, that shows me that there is a desire now to be a better RPer. So.
And to add on to that a little bit, what about a character like, I've been known to make characters and come up the ranks. What about a role player like that? Like, say I come back as, like I did with Kincaid and go for a lower title. What do you think? Should they automatically be boosted that main event position and for the INT for the Undisputed, or should they work their way up just like everybody else?
I actually believe, man, that's another tough question. It depends.
I'm so good at this.
Yeah. It depends on the situation, I guess. With Kincaid, for example, you weren't
as sharp as I was with Derek.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, and I'll say this: I won the X Division as Dustin Jobber.
Yeah.
Okay, Dustin Jobber is not a main event character. I don't try to be him as a main event character. I don't try to portray him as such. I just play him for fun. Now, with a character like that, absolutely. I was in an X Division match that realistically, did I try? No. I just kind of happened, Could I make him a main event character? I'm sure I could if I really wanted to focus on it, but it's not the point. So to answer your question, I think that if you have handlers that are mature enough to, want to develop a character, that's okay. But what I would have an issue with is a guy like, say, let's use Kincaid. Let's say Kincaid won the X Division title. I would
Yeah.
have an issue if Kincaid did nothing but defend the X Division title for 8 months. That's where my issue would come in. If he had stopped, well, what I'm saying is, if you did not want to better the character, you just wanted to keep wiping out the low card guys, I have no respect for that at all.
Yeah, that's
I
understandable.
think that's ridiculous. I also think, that, again, on the same, kind of thought process here, I don't have a problem with a character being developed up. I did that with Dutch. I went from television title to Mid-Eastern title to getting the tag titles, eventually getting into the undisputed scene. So yeah, I think to answer that actually more fully, I don't see a problem in developing a character as long as you're not staying on one thing. As long as you are trying to develop that character.
Yeah, that's understandable. So, before I end, I just want to ask you, I guess you've been asking everybody this too, and it kind of slipped my mind, but what are your goals that you have left in EWE?
My goals.
Yeah.
It's funny. Some people would probably say that, they ask me at times why I keep going. Why do I keep trying? And, it started out as just a matter of wanting to see if I could still do it. I wanted to see if after, half a decade, I could come back to e-fetting and get back to the top. And you want to know something? I did. Not saying that to be braggadocious. I'm not saying that to be a cocky prick. I am. But
Agree.
No. Yeah. But I'm saying that because it was something that meant something to me. And I think that is my goal in EWE still. I want to prove something to myself. And some are like, well, why don't you go to a different fed? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Honestly, I want to make a run in a federation where I know there's good riders. And that's what I did. I started 2.5 years ago, roughly, back at the bottom and developed the character to the very top. And at this point, we're on the cusp of a possible run at the all-time longest winning streak in EWE history, which, to be honest with you, after 10 years of running a fed, almost 8 years, 10 years, to actually be able to be in contention for that is a big honor for me. And I think that, what started as a joke, the DC UDF 2012, Dutch Clark undefeated in 2012, has actually become kind of a quasi-reality. I mean, I've gone 6 months without a loss.
And that's insane in e-fetting terms. That is insane.
Yeah, I mean, some people will argue, well, you haven't really fought anyone. The funny part is, if you look at who I've actually been on a week-to-week basis, every person that I was booked against, I gave them 110%. I've put out, I would honestly say, the best RPs I've done outside of a few specialty matches, such as WrestleMania against you, or with Jack, or King of Extreme 2010. I mean, I think I've really put out some just incredible RPs. And again, not saying that to be cocky. I'm just saying that, I've really put a lot of focus into it. And if you look down the line, I mean, so far, I've been Brooke. I've been, Brooke McGuire, Hall of Famer. White Tiger, Hall of Famer on 2 occasions, in a tag match. And that's something else I want to mention. I've been in some of these just freaking gimmick matches where the fact is, I mean, there's 6, 7 other people involved that, I mean, could very easily. I mean, look at the tag match I was in recently. What was it? Christy, D-Dog, and Dutch versus Brooke. Was it Brooke, White Tiger, and I forget who the...
Yeah, it's slipping my mind too, but I know what you're talking about. I know which match you're talking about.
Yeah. And realistically, on paper, I mean, with no offense to Demetrius at all, but I mean, we were the low end of that scale, you know. And Demetrius was able to put out a really good RP. I have a lot of respect for him. I put out one of the better ones that I did. I remember which one I did too. I believe it was the nude beach with Dutch,
Yeah, yeah.
which got a lot of laughs. And I mean, those are the kind of things. I mean, I was in Phase 3, two Phase 3 matches against so many people, and it's like it's tough. It's been really tough. I went through White Tiger at WrestleMania. I've been The Rock. It's tough. But that's my goal. I want to solidify, in my own mind at least. I don't care what other people think. I mean, if people think I'm a piece of crap RPer, they think I'm a piece of crap RPer. But I think my own record has proved itself, and yeah, I mean, I don't see myself stopping until I don't have any desire left. So
yeah. So I mean, so that kind of answers my next question: is do you have any desire left? And I assume that is you. I assume that you do.
yeah, I mean, will I tell you that I had the same desire I did when I first rejoined EWE? No, absolutely not. It's different now. Not that I have. I mean, I can't say I have more than before, but I don't think I really had less. It's just in a different aspect now. When I first rejoined, well, I mean, even going back further than that, when I first got into e-fetting, my desire was, and it always kind of has been, was to be on top. I wanted to fight in, tooth and nail and be recognized as a champion of a Fed. And, John, you know me long enough. I figure out a way to do it.
Every single time you figure out a way to do it.
I mean, we're talking God knows how many Feds I've been in. I find a way to get to the top somehow. And I think that at this point in my career, I finally realized that now it's not so much about being or getting to the top. It's about staying at the top. And I think that's the one desire that I have left. I want people, when as cheesy as this might sound, I think if I were to die tomorrow, I want people to remember that, man, that Dustin was a really good writer. He really put forth everything he had to be the best. And, to hear people tell you, I mean, like the other day I mentioned Luke earlier, I was talking to him, and he says, you very well could be the best e-fedder I've ever seen. And, I mean, that to me is just like, here's a guy that, I mean, I know him, obviously, I consider him a friend, but, I mean, I haven't known him, he hasn't known me my entire career. He's only seen me in, what could be considered the twilight of my career.
Yeah.
And here's that kind of a compliment. So, it's humbling, as I said, and I think that's really the big desire I still have, John. I think I want to be recognized still as, the best out there.
Yeah, and I definitely recognize you as the best out there, and hopefully everybody else will see the light that I've saw.
I'll say this. I mean, I have no problem in someone saying, hey, so-and-so's better, so-and-so's better. And I do think I could be being, absolutely, I've been being plenty of times in my career, but I think when push comes to shove, I would really think you would be hard-pressed to find someone that has given it as much as I have time and time again. And I think that's where I set myself apart from someone else, is that I joke around with Mike about this a lot, but, you look at, he likes to go on about being a 7-time world titleist. Well, that's great. Except you've lost the title 7 times as well. So, that's kind of, that's kind of what I try to say. And I mentioned this in a conversation with Abdul several months ago. It's not about going out there and winning the big match. It's about going out there and winning every match. And, I don't know. That's kind of my thought process, I guess.
So to end it off, do you want to talk a little bit about your runs with Dutch, and you've done that a little bit, but what about with Jack Michaels? Not a lot of people know about that character as much as they do Dutch. So if you want to end about talking about your runs with both of those guys, and feel free to.
What would you like to know? I mean, I guess with Dutch, I mean, I think I set out to achieve a goal, and I did it. And I think at this point, I I think most people, at least I hope, that they recognize the talent that I have. You know, and not, you know, think I'm just some lucky Joe Schmo. I mean, you can think that if you want. Like I said, it doesn't really matter to me if you think I'm a crappy RPer. I'm hoping that you know, you can see that that's not the case, you know. But yeah, I mean, with Dutch, I mean, it's pretty, you know, you should know that character. With Jack, you know, it was funny because I actually never had any inclination to bring Jack Michaels back to the EWE. And, you know, I filled in during a match, I forget what it was, and I ended up getting a spot in the Elimination Chamber or something like that, you know, which was funny because I just kind of did a filler RP with Jack Michaels, and I ended up getting, you know, getting to the match. I mean, but, you know, I had a little thing with Johnny Chaos, which, you know, I still don't remember who won that match. But
pretty sure you did.
That's what I'm thinking the same thing, John. I don't know. Jay seems to think otherwise. I don't remember it. But
well, if anybody asks you, just say you won them all. That's what I do. If anybody asks,
well,
hey, I won. Yeah, I won that.
You know, but I will say, out of everything, since coming back to EWE, out of everything I've done, and this includes winning the Kingdom Extreme, which was a great moment because it was great to actually be back on top against every RPer that was in the Fed. I mean, really, that was in that match. On top of winning Soul Survivor, on top of the Undisputed runs, on top of the win streak, having a chance to face you at WrestleMania, facing who I consider, in my estimation, to be the best RPer the EWE has seen, and definitely the best student I've ever had. That was a big moment for me to win a world title, even though the title wasn't really the big issue, but it made it just that much sweeter to me to win a world title at the biggest show of the year in EWE, to beat my student, which, you know, as close as it was. I mean, I believe 0.6 is what you always say.
Yeah, 0.6. It was 0.6.
Yeah, 0.6 victory, based on the judging scale, which, you know, that was amazing to me. That was when I was writing the match, I had a lot of emotion while writing it. And I know that everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, it's just an E-Fed." Well, you know, that's one thing I don't like. You know, people joke about it's not real life, it's E-Fedding, it's not this, not. Well, you know what? Every single person that's in an E-Fed, every single wrestler has a handler. Every single handler has emotions, has feelings, is human. You know, it isn't about, you know, when I first joined, it was about hiding behind a character. In the 90s and through the early 2000s, you didn't get to know real people. I think as we've gotten older, we don't hide behind our characters anymore. I think we embrace who we actually are. I hide nothing on the computer. I get along with everyone. If people want to know about me, they can hear about me. They can listen to my voice. They can see me on video. They can talk to me. I don't mind that. And, you know, I do have emotion when I think about, in fact, I still do, just because it meant a lot to me. And, you know, I think in my 15 years, that was probably my favorite achievement, was having a chance to take arguably my best character, bring him out of the mothballs, and have what I think was arguably one of the greatest matches in EWE history. So,
I'm glad I could be a part of that. But it's like you touched on it, but it's like you have those characters, and it's like, you know, it's just like watching a movie. You get attached to those characters in the movie in the short time, you know, within the 2 hours. It's just like that. You get attached to your character, whether you know it or not. You know, you want your character to succeed, and I think to have Jack and Derek, you know, like it was just, I don't know, it gave me, you know, chills to think about it. And you know, every time we go against one another, I always tell you, you know, let's put on a clinic and let's show everybody, you know, how it's done. And that's, you know, I think that's what we did. And I hate to lose. I mean, I hate to lose, even in e-fitting. I hate it. But it, you know, it didn't sting as much because it was you, and you did teach me everything I know, regardless. So
that, you know, that's the one thing that if I was to give, if there's only one piece of advice I can give people, one thing that you to take on is to never want to lose. You have to have a desire to want to win. And, you know, yeah, you are going to lose. You have to accept it. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah, you have to want to win. And, you know, I will tell you this right now. Even if I lost, though, at WrestleMania, John, if you beat me, it still would have been fine because I had a chance to see, to just see if I could still do it. And to get back into how I used to role play with Jack, because I mean, you saw my Jack Michaels filler RPs, my stuff against Johnny Chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't bad by any sense of the imagination, but it wasn't who I was. And I think against you, I had a chance to. It was like I opened up a window and I was able to pull me from 2003,
Yeah.
And I said, "Here, role play for this match," and I did. And no, that was great for me. And you're right. I think that it's like a movie. You grow attached to characters. You might, people ask me sometimes, like if I see wrestling on TV, do I see Dutch Clark? Do I see, Tommy Dreamer? Do I see Rick Rude? Do I see Jack Michaels? The truth is, depending on the situation, I do see my characters.
Yeah.
I don't really. I mean, I'm not crazy. I know who they are most of the time. But no, I mean, I'll be like when Tommy Dreamer had his last little run in WWE. I mean, I'll watch some of those tapes and I'm like, man, Dutch is really going at it, So that's yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a wild thought to think that, but I think every handler is real, and I think every character, whether we want to admit it or not, is an extension of who we are.
Yeah, and that goes back to wrestling too. We all know it's fake, but we want to, at least suspend belief for those 2 hours that we watch it, or anybody who still watches it. We want to suspend the belief that it's fake, so we can, be entertained. And I think that's, like you said, you get attached to the characters you roleplay for. And when I finally retired Derek as the character, it's going to be kind of, it's going to be kind of sad because, I've wrote for him since 2004 or something. So, and every character I try to make different in some way, and I'm sure you're the same way. And so they don't run together. And it's going to be heartfelt when I hang him up for good.
Absolutely. You grow an emotional attachment to even though they're not necessarily real. But I mean, I think even though they're not real in the traditional terms, I think it's real in the mental term. You are them. You are your characters, and
to a certain extent, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I think that the thing that I believe is really an amazing concept is that, you have this connection to everybody else in this world, and I believe this sincerely. I think everyone has some sort of connection to other people, and how we express that connection may be, through our writing, or it may be in real life, but we have that connection, and RPing, role-playing, e-fetting is a way to express it. So
I agree with you. So I guess we're going to cut it here. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
I look fantastic in a pair of Lycra shorts. I just want to throw that out there.
I'm glad you lightened the mood, so I wouldn't up a little bit, so I wouldn't have to end on a sorrow.
Yeah, well, it's not really sorrow. No, if I was going to, I mean, I guess the last thing I want to say is, I want to say thank you, to be honest with you, John. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Jay, to everyone, everyone that I've ever had a chance to help, everyone that I've ever had a chance to go against. It's weird because, like, right now I'm thinking about all the people I've met over the last, so many years, and, you get to know them too. You get to know handlers.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I consider some people I've met on here better friends than I've met, and I have in real life.
Yeah.
If you want to call it that. And, it's just amazing to me. And just all I can say is thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to keep writing for you guys. Thank you for the compliments, for giving me the drive. And the biggest thank you is thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do what I feel I do best. Thank you for letting me, be your undisputed champion. Thank you for letting me do a podcast, and for being here. If it wasn't for you guys, I mean, I wouldn't want to do this alone. So, but most importantly, John, I got to thank you, because other than me, you look fantastic in a pair of lycra shorts. So, I mean, that's no, but in all seriousness, John, no, I want to say you are my best friend in the online world, and I consider you one of my best friends in the real world. So, thank you for being there for me at all times, and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to teach you, help you, and be part of your life.
Yeah, well, most importantly, thank you for teaching me this craft that I have. Like, people don't know, like, you know, I became a good writer because of you in all aspects, not because of, I mean, I'll touch on it some when I get my interview, but not just for e-fanning, but for, you know, class and for, because after you taught me how to role play, it just kind of stemmed from there, and then I was the best writer in my, you know, middle school classes. I was the best writer in my high school classes, and in most of my college classes, I was the best writer in there. So, you know, that all stems from you. So I appreciate it a lot.
Well, that's, you know, I opened the door, John, but you had to walk through.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't take anything away from you, and I can't take anything away from, you know, the other people I've helped. Of course, you know, that is one thing I will say before we get this off. You know, I was never taught how to RP. I was self-taught.
That's crazy to think of now.
Yeah. You know, I just was thinking about that. You know, I never really thought about it actually, John, until just this moment. To be perfectly honest with you, but I just was like, wow. You know, I've helped all these people. I really never had anyone that sat me down and said, okay, this is what you need to do. I just went out and learned. And I learned through experience. And it's like Bobby Heenan when he learned how to bump. You know, same thing. He taught himself how to bump. He wasn't trained. He just learned. And great book, by the way. A little plug for him. If you get a chance, check that out. Bobby Heenan's books are phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and it's cool to see that the craft that I learned and I was able to follow up on is going to continue on. So that's neat.
Yep. So anything? Are we finally done with this? Can we?
I don't know. I don't know. Did we plug the EWE? Did we plug our podcast?
No, we didn't. Go for it, because I don't have anything in front of me.
You're such a disappointment.
I walked
you know what?
away from the computer.
I am no longer happy that you are my student. I am. Mark Viviano is my new number one student.
God.
Guys, thank you for listening. Sorry you got to listen to me ramble for an hour, but you know I hope it was at least entertaining or enlightening, if anything. Maybe you learned something, maybe not. If not, well, screw you anyway. I didn't like you. So,
stop trying to take over my show.
Sorry. Go ahead. You're my guest. Do me a favor, if you are not an EWE fan, please check out EWE at Envision EWE on Google, INVISION EWE in Google. I would give you the website, but Lord knows I cannot recite that off the top of my head because Jay is too lazy to get a regular site name. They're like $2, Jay. I'm just saying. Also, want to plug John and I's podcast. We have two of them now, Behind Enemy Lines, which you are listening to. We do a regular show recap for EWE every week for actually probably going to be more, twice to three times a week it's looking like right now.
Yeah, the way the shows go up and stuff, definitely.
Yeah, generally at least once a week. And, of course, we did just launch our real podcast, if you want to call it that. The Wrestling Evolved podcast, show number 1, just went up not more than a few hours ago. Our first guest was Joe Gagney of Joe's Pro Wrestling Fun Time Arcade. I felt a really good experience. Got to talk a little bit about his thing in Royal Rumble 92. A lot of fun there. So if you guys get a chance, check out our Facebook page, which is, I believe, /Facebook/Wrestling Evolved, right, John?
Yep.
Or you can always shoot us an email in regards to either podcast at what was it? The Wrestling Evolved, I believe it was the Wrestling Evolved Show at gmail.com. So, all right, John, close us out.
I get to take us out for once?
Take us out.
Oh my goodness, this is groundbreaking right here.
If you steal my good fight, good night line that
I'm going to. Shut up.
I stole that from Celebrity Deathmatch, so you can't steal what I've already stolen. I'm just saying. So.
Well, too bad I'm going to. For the always boring Dustin Markowitz, for the always handsome, interesting, billionaire philanthropist, is that how you say it?
Someone's been watching way too much of the Avengers.
Regardless, from the beautiful Appalachian Mountains here in southeastern Kentucky, good fight and good night.
Not bad, Johnny. Not bad.
Thanks.